our Creators Q&A, and today we have a very exciting guest, Daniel Vassallo. Welcome.
Hello, thank you, Randall. Welcome, everyone.
So Daniel is not only the head of product at Gumroad, but he's also sort of my personal hero. He sold over $250,000 in Gumroad products in the last year, and he quit his highly lucrative Amazon job to live this amazing new lifestyle. So thank you so much for coming, Daniel.
Absolutely, glad to be here. Thanks, Randall.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to ask you some of my own questions too. But let's start with the Q&A and let's just jump in. So our first question, this question is on lifestyle design. So assume that you have a bachelor's degree in information systems and a master's degree in computer science. You're 24 years old and you have a job as a junior software engineer. And further assume that you want to spend 3 years of your 20s just partying and not worrying about money during that time period. It would be great if you could achieve financial freedom, but 3 years of not worrying about money would not be bad as well. How would you go about designing that lifestyle, given that you want to start living that lifestyle as soon as possible? It's a good question.
Yeah. Shall I take it on? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something I think I would have liked to do more when I was in my early 20s, was probably exploring more what I like or I dislike. I think it's something that's unfortunately is not done enough. I think basically when you think about it, the odds that by the time you're 20, you have figured out what you like doing, what you dislike doing, what gives you energy, what motivates you, the odds of figuring those out that early are very low, right? And I think we sort of, I'm 37 now, and I think I'm still figuring things out, but I think especially when we're younger, I would probably optimize more for randomizing myself, trying new things, exploring, trying new projects, sort of, and observing myself. Basically figuring out like what are the things that I like doing, even if like I'm not being forced to do them. Because they're very important. So basically, I think what you want to try to avoid in lifestyle design, and possible, is like to take a path that you end up disliking. Right? It's no use in sort of starting to build something and sort of compounding your benefits if what you're compounding comes with something else that you hate or demoralizes you or demotivates you. So yeah, I know it's a very general answer, but I think that's what I would like try to do more. And obviously, you want to do it in a sustainable way, right? So you might still have to have a job, like to make a living or figuring something out. But I wouldn't say necessarily obsess on believing that I have figured it out and I'm just going to start building and compounding for the rest of my life.
I love that. That kind of leads a little bit to your small bets and focusing on, what you actually want to do, and creating those small bets. You can actually live a lifestyle that you want, something that we really focus on at Gumroad, creating this amazing lifestyle, which you've done, which I greatly admire.
Absolutely. And I think a good example is creating info products. Like, it's when I left my job almost 2 years ago, in the back of my head, I thought about potentially writing a book or creating an info product. But it was very low on my list. Like, I had in my head, I thought like I wanted to build a software business first. Second priority was doing some consulting or contracting. I had like a list of priorities, and creating a book was third or fourth. And long story short, things happened where I realized I should probably try to do some of these things in my list at the same time. And funnily enough, I realized that not only creating an info product turned out to be a very, very viable sort of source of income for me, but I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed promoting it. I enjoyed talking about them as I'm doing now. Sort of I ended up sort of joining the Gumroad team just so much, to show how much I sort of enjoyed the whole economy. So it was a discovery as well, right? Like, trying something small like this helped me understand something about me that I didn't know just a couple of years ago. I would have never imagined in early 2019 that I would be here talking about info products. It was completely different direction that I was going. So I'm glad that I randomized myself a little bit and I tried something different from the path that I originally set myself to go on.
Yeah, from Amazon to Gumroad today.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love it. And I think one of your most important things that you always talk about is starting small. And that was big for me this year with, I spent 6 months writing a book. And I think that's something a lot of Gumroad creators should bear in mind, that you don't need to start with a huge product. And you talk a lot about how you created a product in 2 weeks and it was vastly successful. So I think that's something everyone a big takeaway from today. And hopefully everyone start picking more questions in the Q&A. I'm going to go through the next one, but feel free to throw them in because Daniel's going to be here for about 45 minutes. So I'm going to go to our next question. So this question's from Christian. Thanks, Christian. Hey, Gumroadies. Any chance you could add Swedish krona to the list of currencies would be most appreciated?
Yeah, good question. So next year, second half of next year, likely we're going to do a push on payments in general, sort of supporting more countries. I mean, Gumroad is already available in many countries, but there's a few that are not yet supported. And I think we'll consider something like this in that project. Basically, I think adding more currencies, supporting more countries, supporting more creators and customers, it's something that Gumroad wants to do. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely there's a chance, and more currencies is something we'll consider next year.
Exciting. Do you think you could tell us a little bit more about the roadmap, kind of the overall plans for Gumroad next year?
No, so currently right now, the next big thing that's going to happen is supporting Apple Pay. So this basically will allow customers to use Apple Pay when they check out, which we believe is going to help conversion rates, improve customer experience, at least for people that use Apple devices, in particular that who are buying from phones. So we were targeting to finish it by this year. Maybe it will slip into January, but hopefully it's coming out very soon. Then I think the big focus in 2021 is going to be mostly about, we're calling it like supporting more structured courses. And fundamentally what this means is that, because you can still do courses on Gumroad, there's many creators that do those, but basically it's giving the ability to add more structure to how you organize your products and your files, be able to create folders, sort of your videos will show with to your customers with like the progress. Customers will be able to sort of resume from where they left, and sort of basic functionalities to be able to allow sort of more sophisticated courses to be delivered over Gumroad. So hopefully it's something that Gumroad will be shipping incrementally over the first half of next year. Like we just released memberships, for example, recently. It wasn't like one big bang release. It was progress, small changes that have been made over more than a year. And I think same with structured courses. There's going to be sort of small features happening over the course of Q1 and Q2. Then I think another thing that many creators ask us about is a big improvement about the affiliate setup. And hopefully we'll be able to start this in Q1 as well. There's some limitations right now. Gumroad is great for affiliates. I feel like I get, even myself, I get quite a good amount of sales from affiliates that promote my products. But there's a problem.
I'm your affiliate.
Yes, thank you.
I'm honored.
You're one of my top ones.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, top 5 at least, I'm sure. So there's some limitations that I'm sure people who use affiliates know about. For example, affiliatees can't see who they're affiliate from. There's limited analytics sort of features for both the creator and the affiliate to see sort of where the sales are coming from. And other small things like these. For example, another thing that some creators ask us about is the ability to have a form so that affiliates can self-onboard themselves if they wanted to. So the creator could give out a form, and the affiliates would fill up, and this would come with a predefined affiliate fee, and they would automatically join. We hear from some of the top creators that sort of onboarding affiliates ends up being something that they spend a lot of time on. So yeah, that, and I think something that which maybe we'll be able to try to squeeze in Q1, might be Q2, is the ability to support upsells for when you have products with different versions or different sort of tiers. For example, something that I offer in one of my products is the ability to, for an extra $15, sort of, buy an additional data sheet. It's a spreadsheet about my sort of Twitter statistics. And about 28% of my buyers choose it when they buy the product, but there isn't an easy way for someone who bought the base version to upgrade to it later. And it's likely a missed opportunity, right? Sometimes people email me and I have a separate product and I give them the link to it, but it would be much, much easier if customers can automatically just upgrade, and they just pay the difference and they receive the new versions. So that's roughly early next year. Then we have a public roadmap. It's everyone can see it. If you Google Gumroad roadmap, I think it's the first result, and you can see pretty much all the things we hope to do by end of 2021. Sort of the priority, apart from the things that I just mentioned, hasn't been sort of determined yet. And we love to take suggestions as well. So there's a link in there. If you have other things you'd like to see on the list, please let us know. And
I'm really excited. I can't wait to see the affiliates improve. That's going to be so exciting. And then also the structured courses. And I can't wait to see what you do with those as well, Daniel.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump to our next question. How big of an audience do I need in order to sell an info product? See, most of the people from Twitter had around 30 to 50K when they released their first info product. It's a great question.
Yeah, very, very common question. I think so. Just for the record, for example, just as one anecdotal example, when I released my first product, The Good Parts of AWS, last year, it was December of 2019, I actually had about 10,000 followers on Twitter. And I think I had decided to do it around when I had a little less, maybe around 8,000. And it did really well. Like, it sold, I think, over $115,000 in the first 12 months. Most of it in the first sort of 3 or 4 months. But I think the right answer to this one is, I think you should probably play it by ear. I think basically what happened to me when I realized that there's a chance that this would work was whenever I was tweeting about the topic, I was always getting questions. Basically, I started to notice people were interested to know more about my perspective and to know more from me. Right? The topic, Amazon Web Services, is something that has been, there's tons of documentation online, tons of content written about it. If you go on Amazon itself and you search AWS, there's like 2,000 books. So there's lots of competition. But basically, back then I was tweeting quite often about this topic. I was working on my sort of software business and I was using it a lot. So I was sharing what I was figuring out and things that I knew from my experience. And basically, I think when I started to see this engagement and people asking me, what about this and that, and it looked like they wanted to know more nuanced perspectives, I think it's where I realized that there's probably enough demand or some demand. Basically, I admit I had absolutely no idea back then whether this was going to translate to something successful commercially, but I could actually sense that there's interest. At least, that, which I think is an important sign to consider, right, when you're sort of trying to see whether something could be viable or not. So yeah, no. There's definitely lots of examples of people with significantly smaller audiences than that. I think we have Philip Kiley on our team who had even less, like absolutely basically no audience, although he used a very interesting technique where for his book, he sort of interviewed some more influential people and they helped support sort of promoting it indirectly when he launched. But there's definitely many others that I know that had maybe 1,000, 2,000 followers that did exceptionally well. And by the way, I mean, sort of selling to an audience, it's what I know how to do, it's what I've done, but I think there's other ways as well. For example, managing to figure out search engine optimization and sort of getting ranked highly in search engines might be a good strategy for info products, especially if you believe like it's a niche that you might be able to rank well. You know, I think I should also mention it's not something that benefits Gumroad, but another option is to publish with Amazon, for example, the Kindle product with the Kindle program, where Amazon will take a big cut of your profits. I think it's around 30 to 65%, but you'll appear in the Amazon search results, right? So it's a good distribution option, especially if you're just starting out. And you can still have, as far as I know, you can still have your product on Gumroad and on Amazon. I don't believe you're required to be exclusive. So that could be an option that people might consider if you're starting with absolutely zero sort of distribution options. So yeah, many ways. I think something that I would just to close, basically I would approach creating an info product more like a business, right? I think you can never be certain in business and with anything you're doing, but I think it's important to have a strategy of at least knowing where customers might come from, right? I wouldn't just create it and hope that they will come, because they will almost not come, right? But having an idea that I'm going to try to promote it to Twitter, or I'm going to try to promote it by putting it, trying to rank it high in search engines, or by putting it on Amazon, or some other sort of approach. It's good to have a plan, a strategy, so that at least whether it works or not, you can even assess whether that strategy worked or where it didn't work. Right, and you can learn something from it as well.
I love that. That is a great answer. Okay, our next question. As a lifestyle influencer, how do I create digital content that I can sell? Currently, my revenue is only through brands and endorsements. I want to sell digital content to an audience. What should I explore?
Yeah, I think a bit similar to the other question. I think it's keeping your eyes open to basically the way I try to look at info products, at opportunities for info products in particular, is that when I'm sharing what I know, typically I try to share as much as I can, right? Whether I'm using Twitter or writing a blog post, basically I try to put out everything that I know about a particular topic, or what I want to say about it. But there's often more inside our heads, right? Especially if it's something that we're experienced in doing for many years. There's more nuance and more sort of other things that you can probably never express in comment replies, tweet replies, or in short blog posts or things like that. So basically, I think especially when you start getting questions from people about what about this and what about that, or sort of you start seeing sort of situations where you can't really address on social media or in other places. And I think this starts to create the opportunity for an info product. Not every opportunity is probably worth pursuing. Some of them might be still too niche, maybe, or just too, or maybe there's not enough content, or maybe it's just a matter of writing 2 more blog posts. But I think these are the things that inspire me to start thinking about, like, is there material here for an info product? And I think it's good to use that as an inspiration to help you find ideas that might work.
That's kind of how your Twitter product came about, right? Because you were so successful at growing an audience. And personally, I learned so much from you. I had, 1,000 Twitter followers in January, and that changed dramatically after I took your Twitter course, which was so helpful to me. But that's kind of how your product came about, right?
Absolutely. I think it's funny, because I released my first product in December, and then I started to share some of the results. Again, it's just the attitude that I've taken to sort of building my audience, is just sharing what I find interesting, And basically, I was definitely finding very interesting that this book was succeeding, and I was sharing with my Twitter followers. And the most common question I was getting is, since I was attributing the success of that book to having a following on Twitter and tweeting about AWS for several months, the most common question was about how did you manage to gain 10,000 followers in less than a year, and how did you do this and that? And again, like initially, I wasn't thinking of creating another product. I was just trying to answer as best as I could in tweet replies, in other forums, on indie hackers and Reddit and in other places. But then you realize that there's a limit, right, on how much you can say. And basically, it became a situation where pretty much almost every day I was getting a question or two. First of all, I was realizing I was answering pretty much the same thing, and I was realizing as well that I could probably say more about this if I presented what I knew in a different medium, right? And basically, I chose to do this as a video course. It was basically just an hour and a half with myself talking over the slides, shared my desktop to show some examples, which I think worked very well. Which, by the way, this could have been something that I could have done for free, right? I think something worth considering, especially if you don't have an audience first, is that you could make your info product for free, and instead of trying to make money out of it, trying to build an audience from it. Like, I think this could have been something that if I didn't have the opportunity to make money out of it, it could have been an opportunity just to get more followers, for example. I mean, probably not the Twitter course, because one of the reasons that worked was because I had built an audience already, but maybe the first book in particular, right? This could have been something that I could have released either for free or as a series of blog posts. So I think it's something worth considering sort of strategically as well. And how do you want to use your content? Right? Is it for more attention, for more followers, or for sort of monetizing it? Right?
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful idea. That's something that I did because I kind of got the idea from you when you gave away Twitter profile reviews very early on, I think in March.
Yeah.
And, it made me feel like I knew you. We hadn't met at that time. And I wanted to buy your product because I thought, wow, this is so much value. And that actually kind of leads to one of our questions that we got from Twitter. If you had to start from 0 followers again, what would you do differently? And it sounds like one of your ideas would be giving away something for free.
Which I feel that I did, right? Which was mostly what I delivered for free was mostly tweets, right? Basically, I had spent my first 9 months trying to share what I'm finding interesting. Basically, I started my public life after I left my job by basically saying, I'm going to start a new chapter, starting something new. Follow along if you want to see how it's going to turn out, right? And a few hundred people followed initially from sort of from the first blog post, and then I kept doing it. At first, as I said before, like I was working mostly on a software business user base, which is still working on. I was mostly sharing what I was doing. I started tweeting about technical topics because I was doing a lot of that and I was finding them interesting, and people were engaging as well. So that sort of reinforced my sort of my question mark, whether are people finding these interesting. So that was basically my free contribution of sorts. I was doing my best to answer try to answer almost every question that I got, which I have to admit it becomes sort of quite time consuming, right? But I think sort of it pays off significantly. And probably if I were to give an advice, it's definitely to not miss on that opportunity, especially when you're getting questions either on Twitter or in other forums. Like, I think answering with as much transparency as you can, like it really works wonders. Like, because not only you answer that person's question, other people see it as well and get the value out of it. But I think the fact that you answer transparently, I think it also shows and signals that you're willing to continue to do it, right? Which I think helps people to follow you for more, right? Because they sort of expect that you're the kind of person that will answer questions, will share more details, right? So so yeah, I think my strategy worked well, right? And I think it's probably I wouldn't know what to change. Like if I were to reflect back, I definitely wasted some time and how I tried to. There were definitely some things that I tried to share about that didn't work. That probably if I were to go back, I wouldn't do them. Something that I talk about in my course that I think it's very important, worth mentioning, is that um, if you can tweet and talk about everything, but I think if you don't have credibility on what you're talking, people won't listen. Right. So, for example, I might be interested in health and fitness and nutrition and whatever, but I don't really have credibility on the topic. I never really said something, so I might tweet about them, but probably people will not listen, right, or not care about what I have to say. So I think it's very important to address to basically tackle the approach of what you're going to share by making sure that you can establish some credibility. That if you're going to talk about programming topics, either you position it yourself as that like you're just learning in public, right, and you can build a very good audience that way. You're just figuring things out along the way, and you're just sharing what you're learning. Or else you for example, maybe you've already did something interesting and you're just explaining how you did it, right? So yeah, an important thing to keep in mind. So that was definitely a mistake that I did, and at least initially, I was basically wasting time on things that nobody cared about. So good to not do that.
I definitely did that as well, so no judgment. Well, that's a great answer, and actually kind of answers another of our Q&A questions that someone asked. That many people say you need to be an expert when launching a product, but they don't consider themselves an expert yet. And I think that's something you did really well, is you built up your credibility as an expert, and people wanted to buy your product because of that.
Yeah, and I think this is very interesting, because I think there's definitely different audiences. So let me take a step back. I think actually sometimes it can be an opportunity even that you're not decades long expert on a particular topic, because I think especially when you're trying to target people who are also very early in their whatever they're doing, like building an audience, for example. I think it helps me that it was something that I had just started a year before, like 14 months before. That's when I released my product. But 14 months before, I had absolutely no social media experience, haven't posted anything ever online. For multiple reasons, I think people can relate more to somebody that also has just started. But I think even for the creator, for yourself, things are still fresh in your head. I thought about this actually. You, Randall, just released the book about sort of your career, building a career. I think something that I get a lot of questions about that topic as well. But I always feel like it's hard for me to answer, because I started my career like 18 years ago. It's hard for me to remember what do I need to do to break through, or to sort of join companies, or sort of to grow up and get promoted and things like that. So it's sort of those things have disappeared from my head. I don't think about them anymore. Things have changed, right? So many different things. So I think you could see it as an opportunity, right? If it's something you just started, you managed to gain some credibility, and you managed to make something successful. And doesn't need to be spectacular successful, right? Just some level of success. And one last note, I think people like seeing an approach that worked. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, and it doesn't have to be scientifically proven to be the only approach that works, or the best approach, or whatever. It's just people look for inspiration, right? And seeing something that worked. People understand that sometimes there's survivorship bias and other things. You might follow exactly the same steps, but it might not work. But I think there's still value, and just inspirational value. Oh, this person did it this way and it worked for them. You can start thinking about it, and you might choose to do something similar, or take a similar approach, right? So, yeah, I definitely I wouldn't stop myself from creating something just because you don't have like 10 years of experience or something like that.
That is a great answer. It's going to be so useful to so many Gumroad creators. That's something that held me back from creating for a long time. But like you said, you've had incredible success with your Twitter product, and you really got to Twitter last year. You're not a 10-year Twitter expert, and you helped me grow my audience, 35,000 followers just from your Twitter course. So that's fantastic. That's going to help so many people. I love that. Okay, so this is kind of a tough next question. Why is it so hard to get our product shown on Discover? What can we do to increase the chances if we don't have other channels to promote?
Yeah, so the way Discover ranks products is based on recent gross volume. I don't know what the formula is exactly, but it works similar to how apps get ranked on like the iPhone, Apple Store, and things like that in the top grossing charts. So basically, I think it creates a situation where if you're already successful to your own audience, you get ranked higher in Gumroad. Nevertheless, I think Gumroad is not as huge. The Gumroad Discover is not as huge as like the App Store, like where there's like, I don't know, millions of apps. So I think when people start searching for things, I think if you search, for example, Twitter and Gumroad, there's a few dozen products that aren't like an endless list that that never ends. So you still get visibility, right? If the important keywords are either in your title or in your tags, right? So there's definitely some level of exposure there. Nevertheless, I would say I still wouldn't rely on Gumroad Discover as my sort of only distribution form, right? It will likely bring a few sales a month if people are searching for what your product is about, but you probably still want to have some other approach, whether it's to your audience or, as we talked about, search engine ranking or some other form of sort of getting attention to what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, our next question will be really helpful to learn a little bit more about that. Can I ask what you did specifically, Daniel, in order to get your product out there in terms of promoting it via blogs, social media, ads? On the other side of things, how many customers do you estimate found your product searching through Gumroad as opposed to coming to your product through other traction channels? It's a great question, good timing.
Yeah, so the second question about percentage, so I actually just checked yesterday. I made $8,000 in sales from Gumroad Discover from almost 200,000 in sales. So you can do, I mean, it's a small fraction, 4 or 5% maybe. So it's good. I'll take it. I think it helped as well because I was ranking high, especially when I launched my products, right? So probably I got a bit more just because I got sales from other places. But there's every month I get a few $100s, as I was saying. But I think basically to the first question, most of my sales came from my own Twitter account. It was mostly me, announcing them on Twitter, just like Randall just did today with her book. Like,
Thanks, Daniel.
just basically say, here it is, a little bit of a summary, and you invite people to check it out. For my first book, I also tried paid ads a little bit. I tried in January just of 2020, basically a month after I started for a week, and it didn't work out. Then I tried again when the pandemic started. I was hearing rumors that ad rates had dropped significantly and just wanted to try an experiment. And I had a bit of a moderate success there, mostly with Reddit ads. Basically, I had a book about Amazon Web Services, and there's a sub about AWS, and I tried to target there. But then, basically after late June, the costs started to increase again, and I was barely breaking even. So I think I sold about $12,000, and I spent about $8,000 in ads. So it's still a nice $4,000 in profit. At one point, it was even better, the ratio, but then at the end, I wasn't even making any money, so I stopped it. Probably if I had more time, I would probably try some more paid experiments, but they take time. That you have to sort of find a good sort of ads, and there's lots of trial and error, I feel, especially again, like it's not something I know very well. So that's how I was approaching it, just testing things, keeping what works and stopping the rest. But yeah, I think the funny thing that to be honest, I can't even, it's hard to measure right now, is that probably most of my sales in the last 4 or 5 months have been, I would think, mostly word of mouth. And this is something basically I'm saying right now. I haven't been talking much about my products myself, not doing any ads, and I'm still getting 10 sales a day, and I think on average, and I think when I judging from when people tell me how they find it, it's mostly people just being other customers referring them to other people. Sometimes somebody mentions my products in their internal Slack channel or in their Discord, Zoom, or physically word of mouth, right, one to one. And I think it's basically there's that type of momentum. I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm sort of seeing it. If you zoom out, I'm seeing it trending down, right? So there's probably that. I think that's a typical curve of digital products and info products. Right? There's launch day is where you get most sales, and then things start to go down. But yeah, in particular, my second product, the Twitter course, was mostly me. Maybe I tweeted about it 7, 8 times total. I had some help from affiliates as well, which I think affiliates made up about 7% of my sales total. It was a bit more, so I think the average probably is a bit higher in the last few months, maybe 10% or something like that. And the rest, I think, is just mostly word of mouth and that type of momentum.
That's awesome. I think one of the other things that you did that I really loved was that you created this amazing blog post about how you quit AWS. And I think that will also help this question, but also everyone who watched, that you created this amazing blog post and you kind of established yourself as a lifestyle expert. And it was a fascinating post. And I think many people want to live that life. I know I would love to live your life. And I think a lot of people can take that as well, create like one really great blog post and spend a lot of time on it.
Absolutely. No, I think, and you can gain credibility by basically showing that you're living what you're saying. Right? That's probably one of the best ways to gain credibility. Actually, again, like it's hard to call yourself a lifestyle expert. Basically, what I said, like I'm making a big change, and I'm going to be documenting what I'm doing, and that basically gets you some type of credibility that sort of people trust you because you're talking from first-hand experience, basically, right? So you basically, I think you can say you have automatic credibility for everything you're doing yourself, right? As long as you're being transparent and authentic about them, you have automatic credibility about what you're doing. They might not be the best way to do things, but if you're just saying what I'm doing, it's the truth, right? It's what there's nobody can object to what you're doing if you're just sharing what's happening.
Oh, that's great. So this is kind of funny. Someone just said they just started Daniel's course. So
oh, good.
You're going to get a ton of value out of it. Yeah. I think we've actually answered so many Q&A questions just throughout what you've shared today, Daniel. So thank you so much, especially from starting from zero. I feel like you've given people so much information there. And here's another great question from the Q&A from Christian. A question for both Daniel and Randall. Besides your part-time work at Gumroad, what will be your next book/info product? And I'm personally really excited to hear your answer, Daniel. I don't know if you'll share it because I know you're pretty secretive until you have these amazing, exciting launches, but.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm thinking I'm exploring two things. One of them is likely an ebook about like a collection of ideas about lifestyle design, like for lack of a better description, but it's basically things that basically they're not my ideas, but ideas that I've lived myself, and I have a perspective on them. And I like to I'm considering doing something like almost like a collection of blog posts, so they will be similar to 1 or 2 page essays, right, and sort of with my perspective on these. I'm nothing concrete yet, sort of just playing with the idea in my head and just seeing whether there's, again, like whether there's enough content, or whether, again, it's just I should just continue to just talk about it publicly like I do already. I'm also thinking about so I've always been reluctant a little bit with paid newsletters and membership type contents, because I sort of didn't want to enter into the obligation, whether it's explicit or implicit, of having to produce something on a schedule. But just last weekend, actually, I had an idea. I'm not going to share it because I don't want to paint myself in a corner. But it's something. Maybe it will happen. But basically, I think what changed in me is that I realized that there's something that I'm already doing every month, and maybe it could be something that I could convert relatively easily to a paid newsletter. So. Stay tuned if you like to see whether it happens or not. If it will, it might be something quick, actually.
A first buyer right here. Yeah, I think for me, kind of just the next book, I'm kind of working on that right now, and launching it solely on Gumroad. So it's the only place you can buy it, and I'm pretty excited about that. And it actually came out today. And I used a lot of information from Daniel's Twitter course for launch, and then I followed his sales and his launches. So it's something I'm excited about. And if anyone else is interested, we're also starting the next 14-day product challenge in January, something that was heavily inspired off of Daniel and all of his amazing information he shares. So we're taking signups for that now, and it starts January 1st. And I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. And the next question looks really great. What about Gumroad in particular appealed to you, and not some platform like Teachable Podia, etc.? It's a tough one.
Yes, I think
putting you on the spot.
To be honest, when I started, I didn't even consider the other things, because Gumroad was the one I knew. Basically, I think the brand helped it. I had started following Sahil, the CEO and founder of Gumroad, when he wrote his own blog post about, this is definitely one that if you haven't seen it, I think it's called
It was a great one.
What is it called? I forgot now. My $1 billion failure, something like that.
Yes.
It's
so good.
Pinned in his Twitter profile. So I had started following him back then. I think it was early 2019 as well, similar to when I started. And in addition to that, I have to say that I had seen a few other creators like Adam Wetton from Tailwind's CSS and Tailwind UI, like that had been using Gumroad. So I had seen other creators using it, and I felt like, if these creators are using it, if it's good for them, it's good for me. And it definitely helped that I felt like I knew Sahil a little bit. It was just a one-sided relationship back then. Just I was mostly following him, but I liked what he was doing. So yeah, it was pretty much the brand, right? Nowadays, I would say that I've sort of explored some of the other products. Is that I think definitely the most thing I like about Gumroad is just the simplicity, right? Almost radical simplicity with, it's a matter of just dragging and dropping your file, setting a title, putting your price, you hit publish, you get a link, you share it, and every Friday you start getting money in your bank account. There isn't unnecessary complexity and lots of concepts to reason about. Like I just love. Sometimes the constraints help you, right? I mean, even the fact that, like, even the landing page, that it's very simple, and there's something that will likely make more customizable eventually. But I think, to me, it just helps. It's like how I think writing on Medium, right, helps as well. The fact that you don't have to choose anything, styling and other things, just sometimes just helps you not get, stuck spinning the wheels, figuring out what color to choose or how big the font should be. Right? So I love the simplicity aspect about Gumroad, definitely, and I think it's probably one of the differentiating um, features from all the other options.
Yeah, I think customers really relate to that. For me, I actually tried one of the other options this year. I sold my book on a competitor, a Gumroad competitor, and Gumroad, and I got 10 times the amount of sales on Gumroad that I got from the competitor. It was just customers wanted to buy on Gumroad. It's a trusted brand. It's kind of like you're buying on Amazon, basically. You feel like you can trust Gumroad to, with your money. So I know for that's a big thing for customers. And we have another great question. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become good at writing? I am not a native English speaker, and writing is the part that I struggle with to create an info product. That's a great question for you, Daniel.
Yeah, good question. I'm not native English speaker as well. English is my second language. I think one thing I would say is that probably, one of the nice things about this type of self-published info products that I think you can't really do with traditional publishing and other ways of selling content for money is that it's more important to have information quality, right? You just want. Let me give an example. I bought a book from Gumroad a while ago. It was mostly written in almost bullet points, like, believe it or not. Like, it's basically just here's my strategy, and it wasn't even narrative form. It was just almost a brain dump of here's everything that I know in the simplest way possible that I could present it. So that's a very extreme case, but I think you can approach it that way as well. Right? This doesn't need to be a masterpiece of literature or something that's going to, the way I think about it, it simplifies it for me is that I'm sharing knowledge in a similar way as if I was giving a talk in a conference, for example. I just know something about a particular topic and I want to condense it in almost the shortest amount of time possible, because that's something that people value a lot. Sort of information density, I call it. That is the ability to very quickly, in an hour or two, maybe in a single sitting, just consume everything that this creator wants to teach me. Right. So it's probably a bit of a vague answer, but I wouldn't worry about it. I think tactically, I think in terms of writing, definitely I would try to eliminate, and it's very common advice, but eliminate as much as you can all the unnecessary details. Sometimes it's surprising how much you think you might be adding value, but in reality you're diluting what you're saying. Right? It's just many details might be unnecessary. But yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to use to get better at citing, right? Everything you create, I think it's all practice. Everything makes you better, just the act of doing it. And I think, yeah, you don't really need to be. There's definitely many examples on Gumroad from people who probably wouldn't consider themselves great writers or are not native English speakers that are doing exceptionally well. Customers love them. And this is because they've learned something. That's what you want to deliver at the end of the day. That people pay $10, $20, and they believe it was money well spent. They learned something important. Yeah.
A great answer, Daniel. And a little fun question. Daniel, are you planning on sharing more about your house building? I am building parts
Absolutely.
of my house.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you are? Okay, that's exciting.
No, definitely. So yeah, I've been sharing on Twitter a little bit, and I created an Instagram account just to not annoy people who don't care about this, and to be able to try something new as well. But yeah, this is something that I'm doing for its own sake. It's no business sort of motive or anything. I had always wanted to, house design, building houses, custom houses. It's something that I always wanted to do. It was almost embarrassing how little I knew about starting from scratch. So absolutely follow along, Twitter or Instagram, and I'll share everything that I'm not learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming to this Q&A. I just appreciate your time so much. And everyone, give a little shout out to Daniel on Twitter so he can come back again soon and we can ask him all of the questions that we didn't get to today. Just thank you again, Daniel, so much. And for everyone, we have a new Gumroad challenge starting today. So it's a Sail Every Day challenge. You can get access to the Circle community and the guide, and hope you sign up. And thank you again, Daniel, so much for being here. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll see you next time.